Here we've got the Huffman small barn and storage crib donated by Hal Huffman back in 1991 and moved here. And it was located some 18 miles north of here. It's now being served as a saddle and cuppa shop. It was simply to fill in the shed part and make it into a cuppa's shop. And inside both you can see leather working going on, and cuppering, meaning barrel making. You had a wet and a dry cuppa. Of course, the wet cuppa, it had to hold the liquid. I mean, the wet cuppa. The dry cuppa didn't have to be watertight. Harold Starnes, who is in his 80s and helped me move probably the first 25, the two of us moved this in a half a day to Hart Square. Yeah. Now we'll have demonstrators show you about leather working and with the harness shop here, and also about making barrels in the cuppa shop.
Hi. My name is Jeff Eubank, and I'm here at the leather shop at Hart Square, and I want to tell you a little bit about leather and how it was done in the 1800s. And I'm working while I'm talking here, but in the 1800s, leather was used quite a bit for utilitarian purposes. They used leather for all types of things. And leather was created by animal skins. Mostly cattle was used, but other animals were used also. Horses and sheep, goats. Then you had deer and elk and buffalo. All these things made nice leather products. Now, leather, as I said, came from different animals, and they had to be tanned. And the tanning that was mostly used in the 1800s was with oak bark, and it was called veg tanned. And they used the bark of the oak and soaked it and put the hides in and scraped them and created leather that was then useful for making many objects and things. Now, the Native American people, they used the brain of the animal and what you call brain tanning, and then smoked it over a pithy fire to make it soft and supple. Now, once they had the leather tanned at the tanneries, then it was shipped out to manufacturers and to store owners, where it was then sold to the public. The manufacturers, they would take the leather and they would get it in either as a whole hide, or it would be shipped cut in half, and that is called a side. Now, a side works very well for doing long projects, say like reins for driving harnesses, for buggies and wagons, for straps, and for belting, for machinery, for horse-powered machinery, used leather beltings around the pulleys, and so it was very durable material, and it would usually be oiled and have waxes and tallows stuffed in it to make it hold up to the rain. And now when you get that bulk leather, that side, and then you would need to cut it to make straps. And to make the straps, they would use this tool here. This is called a strap cutter. And the strap cutter has a blade and is run down the length of it, and that's how you get your long straight straps for reins and items like that, belting for machinery and those type things. Now, for cutting out items, smaller items, head knife. This is called a head knife or round knife, and it was used to cut the leather out into the various shapes to make shoes, to make pocketbooks or wallets and things that people used on an everyday basis. We have things, you know, like holsters for guns and scabbards, and of course there's the big items like saddles and things like that took a lot of time to cut out and to put together. Now, once you have the leather cut out and put together, a lot of times it was left natural, but they would also oil it, as I mentioned, and sometimes it would be dyed. And they made their own dyes, usually out of natural materials, like walnuts was used a lot to get a walnut, a brown colored dye. And they would put that on the leather and dye it and then seal it with the oils. And then you had the colored finished product. All right, now that I've got this piece ready to sew, I've got a piece over here that's all ready, so we're going to move over to the stitching horse and show you some stitching. Now we're over here at the stitching horse. This is called a stitching horse. It's a vise that is made to hold the project so you have your hands free. Have a awl and 2 needles, and that's how that's called a saddle stitch. And saddles and pretty much everything was sewn in this manner, and you could have both hands free to do your stitching. Now, once the stitching was done and you had your project dyed, then some of the things that finished products, like a gun holster, and this is called a gentleman's wallet that was made and all hand stitched in the different compartments. And of course we have saddles and all kinds of items here that are done in the leather shop.
This is Johnny Olive at the Cooper Shed at Hart Square. I'm going to show you today a few of the things and procedures that it would take to cooper, which coopering is building wooden vessels, barrels, canteens, butter churns, any kind of vessel that you need to transport dry goods, wet, molasses, cider, beer, vinegar, wine, whatever you would have to transport would be used in wooden vessels. The cooper would saw the wood down, pull it in with a horse, soak it in a pond or in a vat of water so it wouldn't dry out, because he had to work the wood green. Piece of wood could be worked down thin or thick depending on the size of the barrel or what it was going to be used for. If it was going to be used for food source, it was usually either maple or white oak. If it was for dry goods, in this area they would use hemlock, pine, and they would quarter saw it so the grain would all be exposed one direction. They didn't use knotty wood because the knots would tear out and leak in vessels. It would be straight grain, or if you're familiar with wood, sometimes quarter sawn. They would split the log using a froe as such. They'd take a maul, hit it, and split it off, and rive it off and get their splits, and then they would come in and split smaller to where they would make small vessels like this, which is a small churn. This would be for a small family, usually an elderly couple. This is all they would need to make their butter. It would be a paddle, but if you notice on the churn, I'm turning it horizontal, you'll see it's larger at the bottom, narrow at the top. So when they worked it up and down, it would cause a rolling action to make the butter cream separate. If you were transporting, if you notice a barrel is swelled in the middle, it's got a contour to it. They could roll it, if it's a big barrel, up on a wagon on one board. They could spin it around like that. They could move it. Easy to handle. Another wonderful thing about the cooper is if you dropped it, you didn't lose it. You kept your contents, it didn't break. Terracotta, tile, glass would break. you would be losing all the apple juice and cider, and we're not going to talk about anything else that you had. You see it's tapered on the ends. It was made for transporting. If it was like this, which is a bucket, it's narrow on the bottom, as you can see. It was made to gather, to scoop. They would put a rock or a weight or something on the bottom, and it would tilt it. It would go down in the well, and when it did like this, it'd fill up with water, and they pulled it up straight, and the weight of the water would straighten it up, and it wouldn't lose the water. So as you can see, coopering was very, very necessary in the early years. When this country was founded and settled, the cooper was an intricate part of the community. He was interwoven with every part of the community because people had to store their food in something that wouldn't go bad, wouldn't spoil, and that's the reason they used wood. It didn't harbor a lot of bacteria, what have you. And as you can see around me, you can see behind me, all kinds of vessels, different kinds, churns, buckets, barrels, canteens. And as you look to my right, your left, you'll see an array of hand tools of all kinds, all behind you. A workbench, a cooper's bench for making buckets and churns would be used like this. The shaving horse would be used to set on to shape and hold. It was an early vise that was devised to hold the wood while the cooper or anybody was shaping the barrel stays. Over here you'll see a cooper's plane. Not many people even see these. This is basically a large plane, or the old people, the early would call it a plow plane, because it was so big. If they were planing like big boards, they had ropes hooked to it, and men would pull the plane and one would guide it. So the cooper had the same version right here, and he'd come across and turn it. It's a compound shape on this barrel stay. It's curved out here. They'd take a draw knife, cut that out, shape the top round. So then you got a side that comes around the barrel like this. Then you'd have your bottom, you'd cut a groove in it and put it in as such. If it tilted out, it was for gathering. If it was closed in, it was for transporting. If it was bowed, as you see the keg, it was for transporting on wagon or storing in a building for later use, or shipping even overseas. Tobacco was shipped, cornmeal, flour, that kind of thing was shipped that way. And this is the difference we've made in the area. This is a metal band and this is wood. We started with nothing but wood, and as we developed or progressed, as we came to metal. Did you know the first metal wagon wheel was done in Catawba County? Bingo, yes it was. Piedmont Wagon Company made the first metal wagon wheel, was made here.